Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another thrilling episode of True Sight, brought to you by the Daily Dot. I, of course, am your handsome host, handsome as ever, having a bit of a struggle with my hair today. Please send me compliments. It helps me dearly. Your host, Ian Double John Barker. Joining me, is my poor, unfortunate co-host, Lee Massey. Lee, sadly, was ganked at level 3 because his support didn't place a ward for him. Now, if you don't want to fall victim to this, place wards for your carries. Like my support didn't when I was trying to farm a 20-minute Battle Fury. I'm never going to pass that quest, and it's his fault, and Lee is dead because of it. Fortunately, he's on a 30-second respawn timer, so he'll be back next week. We welcome him. Joining me on tonight's show are a couple people who know a little thing or two about playing Dota, and more specifically about production. We've got Zyori and PimpMuckl to talk to us a little bit about the Shanghai Major, the cluster, whatever word we're allowed to say on this channel, that is the Shanghai Major. Guys, how are you doing this evening?
Today I'm doing well. I checked out of Dota. I went and got myself a pedicure, and it was fabulous. So I'm feeling great.
I saw the Instagram picture. They were playing Christmas music now while you were getting a pedicure.
No, it was like halfway through. You know, my feet were all gelled up, feeling good, and then I just hear, "Is that Joy to the World instrumental?" What the fuck? It was just like what American Asians that weren't born here trying to think, what do white people like in the salon? Christmas music. This is good. And then we started wondering if they even knew it was Christmas music because there were no lyrics. So it was quite the endeavor, I'll tell you.
It was just soothing. It was soothing, and that's what you want in the salon experience. So
it was. I relaxed.
At least they got that right. Also joining us is PimpMuckl, a producer extraordinaire in the Dota world. JJ, how are you this evening?
I mean, Zyori's shop definitely had better production than Shanghai XD.
No.
Just kidding. It's fine, guys. It's fine. We had great games, right? Whatever.
Feels bad.
No, man, it's going great. Just can't wait for the games. Should be going soon. Hopefully no delays this time around, you know.
What's the over-under on that? I mean, really?
No. We're not going to do that because if you go way too low, you just jinx it, and it's never going to start at all. So,
like betting $1 on The Price is Right? Did you not? You don't know that show?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I'm too European for that.
I was gonna say I actually don't think he does know that show.
I actually have no idea.
I think one day it will start on time. I don't know which day it will be, but I think it's slowly going to improve. Maybe by the final day it'll start close to on time. That's what I want to believe.
Yeah, maybe we'll get it I'm hoping by the final at least we'll start on time because it's the final and conditions should be optimal for people to compete. At least that's what I'm hoping, that after like 4 or 5 days of competition, they've at least learned their lesson by then.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
All right. Well, guys, I brought you in here not just to make fun of the Shanghai Major, but to break it down a little bit. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, cough Zyori, there's been a lot of issues over in the Shanghai production. Strange sounds in the middle of things. Stream quality going in and out. People losing keyboards. People losing their minds. The Shanghai production has already fired one of its crews and brought in a new one, and the new one is also struggling. PimpMuckl and Zyori are here to talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be in that environment. So just to kick things off, Pimp, talk to us a little bit about one of the most famous snafus of the tournament so far, and that was the machine gun noises that were apparently going off in the middle of the broadcast. Talk to us a little bit about putting something together like this. How difficult is it to avoid loud machine gun noises in the middle of a Dota match?
So first of all, if you're not in the US, there's a chance that you don't actually own a machine gun, so you should be okay. But apparently China, everyone does, right? Okay, so just a general solution about any of these issues is one thing which pretty much ESL did in Frankfurt, right? You have 2 PCs, one thing you're going to use all the time, and the secondary one which you actually don't use at all. You just set it up once, you check it, and then you just don't touch it. You actually just have no one sit there. You know, it's like a black box. You don't do anything with it, and as soon as you have an issue like that, you of course have them in the game as well, and you switch to it. You can also take the audio feed from it. So it's suddenly, you know, no machine guns anymore, because apparently it was a bug about if you actually played Element TD on the Observer PC, then there is a chance that maybe with a special courier in use that this sound is going to be coming up. So I don't know, Griffin Rappers, come on guys, stop feeding that. Jesus Christ. No, but honestly, that's how you should always just do it. Always have a backup ready. Whatever you do, always have a backup ready. And if you just need like a minute to go to the backup solution, which it shouldn't even be because you just have 2 observers there, right? The other guy just logs in and just sits there, and you just, pull a plug on the video mixer and on the audio mixer, and you're done. It shouldn't even be an interruption.
Yeah, that's something that is not even just isolated. ESL did this at one event. Like BTS did the same thing. Summit 2, there were issues with a dedicated observer. Summit 3, hey, let's get 2 dedicated observer PCs. One has an issue. We get a bad connection to a server. Boom, hop right over. It works great for when you're doing China stuff for a DAC. You have a bad connection to the Perfect World server. Maybe the other PC has a better one. You switch back and forth. It's not rocket science, guys.
Yeah, fortunately, we were kind of lucky yesterday because while there was bad noise and the stream kept getting lost, at least it wasn't PowerPoint Dota. I guess that was the one thing that we could say about the stream. It's interesting for me to hear you say that there's sort of a redundancy in your broadcasting system. I actually, as somebody who's sitting here at home just watching the games, that's not something that's readily apparent. But is this something that a dedicated production company, especially for a Dota event, would know to do? I mean, is this such a crazy new thing in the world of Dota?
It's not new. It's not crazy. It's just, look, this is a $3 million event. This is the freaking major. If you look how the majors in Counter-Strike are, if you look how LCS in League is, these are events which are at a quality which rivals TV broadcasts, right? Like they easily surpass them in very certain ways. How to present a game and stuff. We have much better experience in esports. And then we have this shit show. And we look like freaking amateurs. Dota looks bad because of these idiots. And it just can't happen. You have a production company. You pay the production company because that's what you should do at a $3 million tournament. I don't care if KTV tells you, hey, I'm going to volunteer for that. That shouldn't happen. You should have the budget for that. It can't be that this actually happens. This should be a professional broadcasting company. And a professional broadcasting company knows you always have a freaking backup ready. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. You just press buttons. It's actually not hard.
I mean, and you can look at some of the other more very simplistic problems like just microphones not working or being unmuted at the wrong times. That's really basic stuff for even like a production company, quote unquote, like the size of Moonduck or Beyond the Summit. Like you have people who know how to work an audio mixer and you make a system so it's pretty straightforward. During a major event, that should almost never happen, like 99% of the time, unless there's a technical failure or something, occasionally talent will unplug to go to the bathroom and then forget to plug in right before it starts. Little mistakes like that happen. But from an audio engineer perspective, you shouldn't be just forgetting to unmute the analyst at the end of the panel. That should really never happen. That kind of stuff is...
I don't know. I actually think this is something I would forgive. Because sometimes, especially the panelists themselves, you can always mute yourself, right, as a panelist. And it also makes sense to mute yourself when you're just walking around just to not drain the battery, or like sometimes the battery is just over. But it's also kind of the production to make sure that if you cut back to the panel, you do a very slight check. This is what we,
if they're all on wireless packs, it does add another layer of confusion.
Just
that is a fair point.
Very quick check. Just say something once. You can already see it in the audio mixer, you can see the input there, and that's all it takes. It takes like 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Yeah. It's okay if you don't do that. It just kind of wasted. You could do that. You should do that.
Now, my question is, obviously, they're bringing in a new production team over there in China. The previous one, I assume, had English speakers on staff to work with the panel and talk about audio issues, talk about how to resolve these issues, even because I'm sure there are people on the panel who have experience, at least, exposure to this sort of thing. I mean, how much of this can be accounted to just a language barrier, just two groups of people not being on the same page? Because, I mean, it seems like most of this stuff is happening backstage, and all of it is coming from the, like you're talking about, the mixing board. Is it really all on them that these problems are happening?
Well, first
hard
of all,
to say from an outside perspective.
Yeah, exactly. First of all, we have to take a step back and actually be like, well, we can only see the end product, right? We can't just beam ourselves down there and be like, well, it's actually, this guy has fucked up this and this and this, so it's on him. Nah, it's not really what happens. In general, I think the problem with China is, first of all, it's a completely different work environment, also different environment in general. Like, you're not used to, even as if you're like K-pop toast with someone who has run a summit, like, which is a
different
huge
work
tournament.
Culture, too.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. And just interfacing with different people from the organizer is going to be really hard, because a lot of people won't speak your language, or just don't really have the same approach to the broadcast, maybe. So I can't really fault K-pop or Rob there. who just can't do anything because it's just so different from what they're used to or what we're used to in the Western environment.
I mean,
so we can't really say something.
You have to imagine some of it is attributed to that communication breakdown across cultures and that stuff, because you can compare it to the Russian broadcast, which has had many less issues. There's still a lot of problems with the tournament itself, but the Russian stream was stable during the opening ceremony. It's not dropping frames, and they have a Russian-speaking production team that comes with them. So they still have to interface with the Chinese crew there for gear and hookups and stuff, but their production can at least communicate in their native tongue. And I mean, you can't just say, oh, well, it was the Twitch servers, because, well, obviously the Russian stream was getting out on Twitch just fine. Mm-hmm. So there's something going on there, and I think it seems like a somewhat natural conclusion that that's at least a part of it, having communication issues, no doubt.
I'm actually glad you brought up the idea of a stream quality, because that was the next thing. Because anybody who's produced something like this in-house knows that you can put together this beautiful package inside and with the cameras all in the right places and the right lighting and everything. But once you send it on into the tubes, if you will, it's sort of the internet's decision whether or not you get a decent stream quality sometimes. Talking about like the stream dropping for the English production, you talked about how Russians weren't having that problem. What does this production company need to do? I mean, what are the fundamentals basically of making sure that a good image gets out there and doesn't drop frames and doesn't constantly go offline like this? What do they need to do different tonight so that the English stream is just as watchable as the Russian stream?
One of the big things there is actually just to make sure that whatever you tested actually works in the same live environment. This is why you can't just produce the make a tech rehearsal and then you only use the preview function, as in you do everything except sending the broadcast over to Twitch. So you have to get the whole pipeline going. And it also I don't know if you guys saw that, especially the viewers. LD tweeted that he had to beg someone pretty much to get an Ethernet cable down into some of the rooms. Like, this just can't happen. Of course you're gonna have frame drops if you do some last minute bad long cables. Long cables are just bad. They're bad for audio. They're bad for Ethernet as well, of course. So if you have some frame drops, chances are you have like 100 feet cable and it just didn't quite work. So you have to test everything from the get-go. And the way how Key TV got changed into a new production company, and then they apparently took all the gear. This is of course hearsay. We don't know for sure. But if it's indeed true, which it looks like, then it makes sense that you have to get the whole pipeline going again. And if you get the whole pipeline going again and you test it, then you also have to test the way it interfaces to the Twitch ingest, because actually the watch, the broadcast on Dota2.com/watch worked very good in comparison to Twitch. So we have no idea what the hell is going on. The problem is just testing, and I think the way the poor new production company got thrown into the cold water where they had to make something happen without anything. It's going to be super hard, right? And it's understandable, but they have to get this shit together. This is it's just unacceptable at this point. No one cares really if it's fair or not. They have to get the product out.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because they were thrown into this completely new environment, and we were actually talking earlier in the office. I was talking to my technical director, and I sort of laid out the scenario for him, and he said, if I had to walk into an event like that with hundreds of cameras and bringing in my own equipment, presumably they probably brought some of their own equipment and they had their own system for how things work, and trying to shoehorn that into a $3 million production. I mean, $3 million wasn't the budget for the production, but certainly $3 million worth of expectations, and being asked to do that on the fly, it's not great, obviously, that there are still these issues in productions, but a part of me does sympathize a little bit with them that the people who are asked to come in on backup are being given such ridiculous circumstances to work with. Zyori, I actually wanted to go to you next because one of the things that obviously stream quality can affect is your performance. I mean, if you're broadcasting to people and it's a good even stream, I'm sure you feel like your message is being heard. Nothing that everything that you're saying is coming through in crystal clear 1080p. What does it do to you on the desk to know in the back of your mind that certain production issues are going on that are maybe making it so that your performance isn't even being seen?
I mean, it's pretty brutal. There are two recent pieces of media that you can reference here. One, the post that James made. He talks about the post TI4 opening panel that he felt went very poorly, was a big opportunity. He describes it in great detail. I think it's almost an entire page of his thing that he wrote. it's incredibly frustrating, and that's why you have explosions like that when you just yell at somebody and you yell at the wrong person at the wrong time because you're just so furious that you worked so hard on something that so many people watch that just wasn't working properly, right? Second piece is the vlog that Coddle Guy made after day one. I actually just watched it before this broadcast started here, and it's really good. It's pretty emotional, pretty raw, and him just talking about like, this sucks. You have this weird roller coaster of being very grateful to have the opportunity to host a major, even though it was sort of defaulted to you in this awkward way that isn't particularly flattering. It's still a ridiculously awesome opportunity to do something for the Dota community, and you're also just upset and irritated and mad that all of this stuff is going wrong and you have no control. And I think that's the most frustrating part. As the host of the panel, your job is to control the panel. Like, you're kind of in charge of getting them ramped up, trying to get things to be funnier and getting things to be serious. Your job is to control the tone of the panel. And when all those production errors happen and you have no idea what's going on, and it's like, all right, we're 90 minutes into the pre-show, I don't know if a game's going to start, you kind of start to lose it a little bit. You just lose control of the situation. It makes your job so difficult. So you can hold it together, but it is one of the most draining experiences I think I've ever experienced. That's for sure.
Well, certainly you can only, sort of theory craft about what OG is going to pick in the bot lane for, an hour before that well starts to run dry. And I think perhaps that's why, maybe some of the issues with James, he needed material. And so he went to his wheelhouse, which is that sort of sarcastic, sometimes crass humor. And it's just a damn shame that it bit him in the butt like that. Great prank, right? Just like Perfect World. Am I right? Welcome back, guys. We've got the stream back up and running. I just wanted to say thank you to PimpMuckl for coming on the show. Pimp, I believe your final thoughts were swallowed up into the vacuum of the internet. Do you want to give us your final thoughts on the Shanghai Major production before we switch to our next topic?
Yeah, very briefly. I think one thing which is really important for everyone here, guys, let's just enjoy the games. If the stream doesn't go and shit itself every 2 seconds, we should be good to go, because the games so far have been freaking amazing. And I don't know, like, I'm really glad we got this amazing and this great quality in pretty much all of the series yesterday, honestly. Like, even CDEC versus Yubi went pretty crazy, man. So yeah, let's just enjoy the games. It's all gonna be good, homies. It's all gonna be good.
You heard it here. Straight here from the production master himself, PimpMuckl. It's all going to be good, homies. Pimp, thank you so much for coming on the show. Zyori will be back later on in the show, but in the meantime, we're going to bring on an official prediction person, an analyst, if you will. That's the word I was looking for, to talk about the Shanghai Major. His name, the name of a famous war general who's been dead for quite some time, is Sun Tzu. He'll be joining us briefly. For those of you who haven't caught any of the Shanghai Major yet, you're missing quite a bit of action. Spoilers ahead if you haven't seen the VODs. This is your one warning. Last night, Team Liquid actually took down Alliance. The famous battle of who should receive the direct invite went the way of Team Liquid. He won 2-1. They won 2-1. And meanwhile, in the other upper bracket final, or the other upper bracket match, MVP Phoenix took down LGD 2-0. And if you haven't seen the memes that Korea was spouting after LGD's untimely demise, please look those up for yourselves because they're pretty entertaining. Sun Tzu, are you there, sir?
Hey.
Welcome, sir. You how are you this evening?
It's 2 a.m. in Finland, so and
our bad.
I've been pretty much in the Chinese schedule of things. Mm-hmm. So I've been waking up at like around these hours, but the fact that that we went so late yesterday, I think everyone's a bit tired right now.
I know that I keep trying to like pound energy drinks to stay up late at night and then go to work early in the morning, and something's got to give eventually. I swear that it has to. I assume you caught the games last night, sir. Go ahead and give us your informed opinion of what went down last night. Let's go ahead and start with Team Liquid versus Alliance.
I think everyone sort of had the expectation of Alliance showing up in that game. They looked really good in the group stages, but Liquid really had done their homework. They looked really crisp. Their drafting has been a bit of a iffy point for them recently, but they seem to actually get the better of Alliance, and that's not easy. S4 is one of the best drafters that we have in the scene. Beyond that, Alliance has had there've been some problems against aggressive teams. We saw it at the captain's draft when they played against Vega. They struggled a bit against that aggression, and while you wouldn't normally associate it with Liquid, they have been playing quite aggressive in the early game, and they just sort of set it up for. They sort of play this aggressive early game, and then they set it up for Matumba Man to carry the game. And Matu carried the game, and they won the game. That's it.
It really did feel like it was not necessarily who was in better form, but just that Liquid was more prepared to face Alliance than Alliance was for Liquid, didn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't feel like the Liquid that we saw against Alliance is quite the same that we saw in the group stages. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, then again, Alliance did go out of their way not to show much during the group stages. It was 19 heroes in 4 games. But what they did show, for example, they showed this whole thing where they highly pick Beastmaster and then they go into the Enchantress, or wait, was it the other way? Enchantress into Beastmaster. Well, anyway, they did that in game 1 against Liquid. So I think they had that scouted out, and Liquid dominated that game. Mm-hmm. So there were these small patterns that I think Liquid might have picked up on, and they managed to exploit.
It certainly wasn't like a roller. Like there was no decisive winner in this game, I don't think. I mean, game 1 was sort of a bare knuckle brawl. Game 2, Liquid almost took it until Alliance, Lotus Naga was able to tip the scales. I mean, this was a game that, to quote Nahas from the chat, was kind of a pick'em going into it. Do you think that Alliance is still just as strong as we thought? They just sort of hit an early bracket upset that put them in the lower bracket?
Well, I felt before this series that Alliance looked like a very clear top 3 team. Now, maybe not quite as clear, but I think they're still very strong. So we'll see. This might just be a single hiccup, but if they don't quite have the depth that we sort of hope for them, then they're facing eHome next, and that's not a good place to be when it's a best of 1. eHome's a pretty explosive team, and that might not be the best matchup for them. And then even if they win that, if they win that, they probably face either Complexity or LGD in the next matchup, and those are maybe a bit better matchups for them. So once they get past eHome, it might be doable still to get quite far.
The best of 1 rounds always seem to be a dangerous time for any team, because if one team picks the right strat, or they pick an early game strat and it gets snowballing, that can really ruin your chances quickly. The matchup, we actually had a pair of really great, even though they took a while to finally air, we had a pair of really great series last night. The other one, obviously, MVP Phoenix taking the 2-0 over LGD Gaming. Please tell us, enlighten us, what has changed about MVP that they're suddenly winning?
I don't know if that much has actually changed. I think sort of, I believe a couple of people were saying that sort of the playstyle that MVP had been showing right before this tournament is pretty much what we're seeing right now. It's just that it's very explosive, and for some teams, if they haven't played against something, they're not quite comfortable against it. So they have to sort of get that experience, feel the game in that sense. And for teams like that, they're not going to give you enough time to sort of get comfortable with it. Against more analytical teams who sort of who look at the replays and prepare it that way, I think those teams might have a better chance against just countering MVP, how they work. It's going to be interesting seeing them go up against Liquid, because Jerax was on MVP Hot 6, so he's played with some of these people, and he's stayed in the team house with most of them. So I don't know if Liquid is particularly a great matchup for MVP in terms of how they play. I think MVP might be able to exploit mind control on the offlane. He's been having a bit of an off tournament. And I think in terms of the mid lane, if they can force Fada onto heroes that are more slow, then that's going to help them a lot. Just how MVP plays, they sort of pick mid-game heroes and just go really aggressive with that. And you can sort of think of it similar to what Vici Gaming used to do when they were at their very best. They did a lot of these mid-game strategies, triple cores, and they were really aggressive about it. So that's a lot of what I'm seeing from MVP right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at MVP's lineups against LGD, and there's a lot of level 6 power spikes going on. You've got, in the first match, you've got Lion, Nature's Prophet, Outworld Devourer, Witch Doctor, and Ember Spirit. Ember Spirit, obviously, one that's going to be potent for most of the game, but once he gets his remnants online, makes a big difference. And then in the second match, Wisp, Bristleback, Juggernaut, Vengeful Spirit, and Invoker. A lot of people in there that once they get their ultimates online, there's a lot of ganking potential. Lion with the finger, Nature's Prophet with the ultimate to add to some global presence. Then, of course, the relocate ganks with Io and a potent core are always good. Now going into the next game, you talked about wanting to pay attention to Fata in the mid lane, and that's going to be a big target for them. Give us your insight. Is MVP Phoenix a team that managed to beat some Chinese teams that took the New Year off, or are they strong enough right now to beat the team that beat Alliance?
It's hard to say. I think certainly MVP has had a pretty lucky bracket. Secret just don't match up well with them. They don't play well against aggressive teams. And Yom just didn't show up. So in that sense, they had an easy group. Their first matchup against LGD apparently, I honestly thought that LG would have been a good matchup for them, but LGD clearly didn't do their homework. For example, like the Bristle IO strat that you mentioned, I think that's almost 2 years old by now. You should see that one coming when they pick up IO. It's also sort of interesting because the way I think it's more like the Koreans than the SCA, but anyway, the way Wisp is played, IO is played in that region, it's sort of played as a mana and health battery more so than the relocate ganks, and that sort of tells you a lot about how they like to approach the game. So, I mean, there's certainly elements here that tell you they've had a easier time than maybe could have been the case.
Sure.
But at the same time, this is a very explosive team, and there's going to be a lot of teams that just can't deal with that. Mm-hmm. So just if you play that kind of style to a certain degree, you tend to do well at tournaments at least once. The thing is, it has a diminishing return. Mm-hmm. You saw it with CDEC. They did it once, and then it sort of started. It stopped working after TI5. After that, they needed to expand what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And some people say that, they picked some new strategies that they didn't show in the group stages against LGD. They still, for me, it was largely the same philosophy of the game. So
that they weren't going completely off the books to beat LGD. They just beat them. Yeah. Fair enough.
So I don't know. I think LGD's probably going to make a decent run of it. but we'll see where it ends.
Well, I know there's a lot of people quickly becoming QO fans out there. Coming up next in the bracket tonight, just to round out the results for everybody at home who didn't get to watch, eHome beating Team Archon, Complexity beating Team Spirit, Virtus Pro over Vici Gaming in rather convincing fashion, and then Newbie over the former international runners-up CDEC Gaming. Coming up tonight, we've got some really exciting games that I'm going to put you on the spot to predict, Sunzu. We're going to go with OG versus Team Secret next. There are people who would look at this and say that Team Secret is poised for a resurgence. There are some people who would say that Team Secret is on their way out and OG is just going to wipe the floor with them. One thing that nobody is arguing is that OG is strong. Does Team Secret have what they need right now in order to beat OG tonight in Shanghai?
I think OG is by far the more versatile team. And in terms of just, I think Fly doesn't get enough credit out of the Western drafters. He's been a very strong and very innovative. And it's actually not just him. The dynamic that they've had ever since Fanatic is that No Tail is this mad genius, and he comes up with these strats that make no sense, and then Fly takes the good ideas and makes that into something that actually wins games. And you saw this back with Fnatic, that they are a really inventive team. They sort of reinvent themselves and they come up with new approaches to the game. And I'm pretty sure they have a lot of ideas prepared. So in that sense, I don't think you're going to really catch them out. And meanwhile, Secret is, like, Puppy is a pretty good drafter, but he's also sometimes quite stubborn. And on top of that, he's working with a couple players who just haven't shown to have a particularly good hero pool right now. I feel like Viha and Misery, they're on pretty limited hero pools right now. So you're probably going to see Fly trying to target that. And in that sense, I think the advantage is in OG's favor, fairly heavily even.
Are you going to call it a 2-0?
I don't know. OG is still, like, for me, it's still Fanatic Light, Fanatic E Light, and that means that sometimes they go full Fanatic. And that means you don't predict 2-0s because, well, you saw it during the groups. They should have won that series against LGD 2-0. And then I don't know what the hell that game 2 was. Yeah.
Moving on to things that are also not quite so easily predicted. Evil Geniuses versus Fnatic. Now, Evil Geniuses coming into this tournament, a lot of people make jokes about week 1 or day 1. Evil Geniuses not always quite up to speed yet because they sort of sleepily walk into tournaments occasionally. They try to put some wins together, and they get just enough to get into the right position and then make a great run for the championship, or lately the second place. Now, they're playing a team in Fnatic that is also just like MVP Phoenix, showing some rather surprising results. Go ahead and break this down for us and give us your prediction. Is this Evil Geniuses match to lose?
To an extent, yeah. I think Fnatic is showing some fairly interesting stuff. They've got some of their own stuff, and then they've got some strategies that are very much common with MVP. For example, you saw one of the strats that MVP was running was the Invoker Furion Disruptor thing, where they basically just want to ensure that they have a numbers advantage in any early skirmishes. Fnatic also ran a version of that where they go. I think they pick first pick Furion and they third pick Disruptor. So you see these sort of similarities. The difference between MVP and Fnatic is that I think MVP have the better 1-2 punch in QO and MP. I think they're playing better as a 1-2 punch than the equivalent for Fnatic. For Fnatic, I think they're relying a lot more on mid one. While everyone talks about QO being so important for what MVP is doing, mid one is even more important relative to what Fnatic is trying to accomplish. So there is that. On the other hand, EG is quite scary right now. They started out better than they usually do at these tournaments, and they've had time to scrim and they've had time to learn, and I think it's starting to get to that point where you're not going to beat EG, not unless you're a really good team. I think the game to watch for there is like the OG against EG game. I think that's going to tell you a lot about who's going to end up eventually winning this tournament.
So you think whoever wins OG versus EG is gonna take it?
It depends how exactly it goes down. Apparent that like a lot of people were talking about how OG has EG's number. They kept on beating EG whenever they met. Thing is, they always met once per tournament. And OG was always effectively a new team every tournament, and EG always has to learn their opponents. And against that good of opponent, they can't just study it up. They also have to like get the feel for it. So OG kept on having that advantage. I sort of described it on Twitter when I sort of came up with this theory, sort of that OG has the advantage in the short run. In the long run, EG would have the advantage. But OG keeps on resetting the advantage. So the one time they've met twice during an event, OG won the first time, EG won the second time. Now, OG might have picked up on that, and they might have this sort of idea in the back of their heads that when we face EG for the second time at this event, if we face them for the second time, probably are going to face them for a second time, then we have to sort of be ready to change up our play style at that point. So we have to have something different to offer. If they can do that, then maybe. But the thing is, I don't think we've seen them play a best of 5 either yet. So we've only seen them play best of 3s. So we don't know how it develops over that long of a series. But it's going to tell us a lot about sort of the relative powers of these two teams right now.
Well, I'm sure it's a match that a lot of people will be looking forward to. Now, we're running out of time on making predictions, so assuming that we've got Team Secret losing to OG and we've got Fnatic losing to Evil Geniuses down in the lower bracket, I want your rapid-fire predictions. Best of 1, I'm going to name 2 teams going against each other. You just give me the team that you think is going to win, all right? Yep. Alliance versus eHome.
Alliance.
LGD versus Complexity.
LGD.
We've got Team Secret versus Virtus Pro.
BP.
Ooh. And then finally, we've got Newbie versus Fnatic.
Newbie.
Oh, man. So a sad day for the Fnatic hopefuls out there. Suntz, thank you so much for joining us, sir, and we appreciate your predictions. Obviously, the games will be going, assuming that production has their stuff together, not too long after this show, so be sure to tune in. Suntz, any final? Real quick, any final thoughts before we head on to our next topic?
No, it's been a joy to be here, and I hope we get some good Dota today, and I hope we get some Dota that's on time.
I just hope we get more machine guns in the middle of the broadcast, because I literally spit out my beer laughing at that. It's so hard. All right, guys, but thank you so much, Suntz, for joining us. Before we move on to our next topic, we've got our good friend Tiffany joining us. She was a little bit absent last week as we broke down the Shanghai Major, but she is back with a new team fight discussion telling you a little bit about how to prioritize your objectives in the early game.
Hello everybody, I'm Tiffany and welcome to Tiffany Teaches Team Fights. This week's fight comes from the group stages of the Shanghai Major with MVP Phoenix versus Team Secret Game 2. Let's talk early game fights, and what better than the battle for the first rune. This rune fight is a 4v4 engagement that turns into a 2-1 trade, which is oddly even thanks to objectives. Now, into the fight. A bit of scouting by Bounty and a sentry from Secret, and the fight is on. After some target switching and general rune fight confusion, the two teams hone in on their targets. Secret focused down the Leshrac, the absent Invoker showing off his global presence with a Sunstrike. Throw in a heal bomb and the Disco Pony is out of luck. MVP, seeing their Leshrac get Leshrecked, target the backline with the squishy support conveniently already stunned. Dazzle. Each team, once they found their marks, take them out with startling efficiency. But wait, the fight isn't over. As MVP disengaged, Tiny, Io, and Spirit Breaker chase down the half-health Venge, eliminating the vengeful spirit in her own jungle. 2 for 1 for Secret with First Blood. Pretty great for Secret, right? Well, here's where the objectives come in. Both bounty runes went to MVP Phoenix. Because of the chase, the PL got to the lane quicker than Tiny, and with hardly a pause, the bounty hunter snipes the secret courier. Now don't underestimate early game kills, they can really set the tempo for the rest of the game. But objectives as simple as bounty runes, a small lane advantage, and a courier snipe can make up for a slightly unfortunate beginning. So remember, focusing on a target, especially a backline squishy support, can get you a quick kill. There are ways to make up for early kill disadvantages. And finally, this has been Tiffany Teaches Team Fights. Back to you beautiful people at the desk.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for your that marvelous breakdown. I learned a lot, and maybe a little bit about why I keep dying trying to get the River Rune. Joining us once again from the beginning of the show is Andrew Zyori Campbell. Andrew, welcome back.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Again.
Yes,
So talk to us a little bit. Obviously, there's a big party going on in Shanghai, although it looks like maybe you lucked out not getting on the plane for that one. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing now that you're back in the States, waiting for the major to wrap up.
Yeah, I've been a little quiet, at least publicly, the last couple of months. After I left BTS basically after TI5, and I spent a good 3 months or so after that just traveling around, partially for work, partially for pleasure, and I just finally got settled down in New Jersey. So outside of Captain's Draft 3, we're looking forward to potentially the next Captain's Draft and how we want to set that up, when we want to do it. And it's tax season, so that's been a lot of fun getting all of the initial stuff for Moonduck squared away for our first tax year. As a, business person, that stuff's pretty exciting, though it's dreadfully boring to everyone else. But I'm finally, I just started kind of rebooted my podcast. I'm finally feeling that Dota fire again. It's kind of easy to get burned out in this industry when you're just going to event after event after event. And I finally took my breather, got my second wind, and now I'm coming back strong. So I'm pumped up, man. I was really excited to watch this major, and have hence been disappointed at not being able to watch parts of it that I was excited about. So
that would be, I can understand your frustration, but obviously just a lot of really exciting things going on there. Tell me, does H&R Block do like a business thing? Can you just go there and
fuck H&R Block, dude? That is garbage. Oh god, I've had bad experiences with the Block. I would never trust them with my business stuff, let alone my personal stuff. My god,
the
terrible,
Block.
dude.
I didn't know you guys were on a first name basis.
No, it's bad. It's expensive, and you get people that know less than I do. I had 2 semesters of accounting. That's at least something. They're like, hey, we did the fast track. I know how to account if I follow the guide. And they charge you by page if you own stocks. Forget about it. I don't want to go on. I digress about H&R Block, man. That shit's terrible.
You have an extra 20 minutes. We could go on about taxes sometime. In the meantime, we'll stick to Dota. So tell us a little bit about your podcast. Obviously, you're doing a lot of cool things over at Moonduck. You guys are producing events. You're commentating a lot of those. The Captain's Draft was a lot of people's favorites coming off or headed up to the Shanghai Major. What is your podcast about? And what's your goal for it moving forward?
Well, it's kind of just been a fun outlet for me. I've been doing it since 2013 when I first started getting into the broadcasting stuff, like 2011. But 2013 is when I decided I wanted to do a podcast. I want to be like Joe Rogan. Huh? I can live the dream too. So it's just been one of those things that's been fun, that's been an outlet. When I was working at BTS, there are a lot of things that I couldn't talk about on stream. Politics don't really have a place on a Dota stream, at least not that often. So I was just a place where I could talk about real world stuff. I mean, I usually use it as a platform to give my opinions about gaming stuff when it's relevant, but just to talk about kind of whatever. And I've gone in cycles with it where I do it every week, and then I take do like one a month for a little while and come up with more ideas. And now that I'm settled in Jersey, I've got some local people that I'm excited to podcast with that are not Dota folks. So I'm starting to expand it out to some other areas, just some cool dudes that I think would make for good conversation on the podcast. So it's fun. It's really more of a hobby. I guess esports is a little bit of a hobby as well, but that's my sub hobby within the industry,
And certainly, like you said, it's easy to get burned out on something like Dota 2 with the constant viewer feedback, the constant work, things like that. I imagine it's got to be fun to step away and do something that you're also passionate about. Do you find that helps you recharge your Dota batteries a little bit to step away from things for a little while?
Kind of, yeah. For me, it always used to be the opposite, actually. Traveling to events was the thing that recharged my batteries, especially at the beginning, when I was like doing StarCraft 2 stuff before Dota 2 was even really around. You would grind a lot at home to low viewer numbers with shitty production value, not really knowing what you're doing or getting any valuable feedback. And you constantly ask yourself, why am I wasting my time? This isn't any fun. This is a lot of work. And then you go to an event and you feel that energy and everyone's going ape shit and your eyes get big and you're like, man, one day I can be like day 9 if I work hard enough. Oh, man. And, that would refuel my energy, and then it slowly dips down again until you go to the next event. And that created this cycle that helped motivate me to save money, to travel to as many events as possible and keep filling up my esports cup. Eventually, you go to enough events that the inverse starts to come true. And that's kind of what happened towards the end of last year, where I was going to like an event a month and just traveling all around. And, part of my nomadic experience and not having a home base was just I kind of filled that void in my life by traveling and seeing a lot of my friends and driving around here and there. So I was just ready to settle down. And I kind of took December off. I did some behind-the-scenes stuff with Moonduck, and I basically just watched Netflix and laid around for the month of December and recharge. So sometimes you definitely need to take a break. Played a little World of Warcraft, a nice single-player game. That's a good way to get a break from Dota when you're tired of those solo queues and your teammates that are not really looking to try so hard.
I tell you, I got a 20-minute and 10-second Battle Fury the other day on Anti-Mage because I got ganked once, and I about went into it. I mean, granted, I know that's not good. I know viewers at home, that's not
bad for solo queue pubs.
But I had to take a break from Dota because I wrote an absolute diatribe to my support because he bought a Heaven's Halberd before buying any wards. And I was so angry that I was like, okay, probably need to take a step away for a second.
That's what I do when I rage. I just pick Witch Doctor and say, fuck you guys, brown boots, Ags, let's go. 25 minutes. I'm going to team wipe them. We're going to win off that push. If they don't like the game plan, I mute them and farm in the jungle. That's my rage pick. It's,
Just go for the glory play. Get like the glimmer cape so you can be invisible during the ult. Get like the fucking like Lincoln sphere. Just like go all out.
I go man mode when I play Witch Doctor. I want that bouncing death ward as quick as possible. Fuck the glimmer cape. I know it's the better build. I know it's the plus EV play, but I still just I shoot for the numbers. I just want to look at the damage output and go, suck it. It's a release, man. It really is. That's all pub games are. I don't give a shit about the MMR, even though I wish it was higher. It's just I just try to have fun. That's what my stream's all about. I just troll people. It's flamboyant. It's ridiculous, and it's all about getting people to laugh. Really, Slacks has infected me.
It's actually funny you mentioned that because it seems like that's sort of, whether intentionally or not, the milieu of Moonduck, as you guys seem to have taken the fun, the quote-unquote casual streams, the quote-unquote meme streams, and obviously that's not all that's going on over there at Moonduck. You guys provide great information, you provide great tournaments, but it seems like you guys have sort of tried to hone in on the more fun side of Dota. Was that intentional? Did that affect your decision making in who you brought into Moonduck to begin with?
Well, yes to the first part, kind of to the second part. It was definitely intentional. You don't come up with a name like Moonduck TV and have a logo for the hippo fucking the earth and expect everybody to take it seriously. I mean, that was definitely part of the design, was to communicate that we're different from your average studio. We're not trying to be something that we're not. We're not trying to be super serious ESPN. I mean, that was one issue at BTS during the time that I was there, was trying to decide, are we trying to be MLG or ESL, or are we trying to be the Summit fun guys, the memesters, where we're messing around and we're like, because BTS kind of started as that grassroots, very raw, very organic. We don't really care about what you think. That sort of, this is awesome. We're here and we're representing the community. And then as things get more serious, of course, you want to be able to show everyone that you can be serious. for TI and add that to your resume and all that kind of stuff. So finding that balance is difficult. And right out of the gate, we wanted people to know that our goal is to try to find that balance, and if anything, lean to the goofier side a little bit. Slacks is one of those people that I think has really changed the whole dialogue. I talked about this in the last podcast I did a bit, but I think he's really changed the dialogue around comedy in the space, because we haven't really had a great comedic relief person since Pyrian. He's been the gold standard pretty much forever since Dota has risen in popularity. And now we're seeing that having versatility and bringing that side out in more people is what's important. You can't just take a serious panel with 3 analysts, a host, and then put the funny guy on the end and be like, all right, make some jokes. Let's get a hat on this guy. But let's loosen this up. Let's loosen up this stool and get everybody laughing. But it doesn't really work that way. The rest of the panel kind of feels like they don't want to take thunder away from the funny guy. And the funny guy is sort of in this weird position to try to make jokes in this very serious scenario, and I think the next step in these panels is realizing that we need to have banter and we need to have back and forth. What's really important is not as much, hey, is this guy a really top-tier analyst, but is this guy able to speak about the game in an educational and statistical manner, but also have presentation? Like, there aren't that many people that are even at the point to be considered a professional level analyst in Dota, because most of the people that have that knowledge are still playing the fucking game, And, we have people like Purge, but he's not even an ex-pro, at least not on the same level as someone like Synderin, for example, kind of, again, the gold standard of analysis. But what makes Synderin so great is he has that knowledge in the package of he's funny. He has banter. He can go back and forth. He can go off the cuff and, make funny jokes. He has a pretty good presence on camera. That's a bit of a rarity, and we need more people like that. And I think people that design panels are starting to realize that it's worth it to take a hit in having that raw analysis if you have people on there that are really vibrant and eccentric and bring a lot on. I think we took the Too Good Bruno days for granted. We didn't know how good it was. They made it look so easy, but those guys are particularly skilled at back and forth banter and loosening up a panel. And I feel like we're feeling that difference with those 2 guys out of the equation.
And it feels maybe like that's a little bit of, there was some Reddit backlash to the idea of meme streams and everybody saying all these dumb jokes and stuff like that. I don't think the core of it was that people didn't want humor in their Dota streams. It's just that being funny on live air is kind of fucking hard. Is it really that simple that there's just only so many talented funny guys in the Dota world?
You're definitely right. It's not just about, hey, you're funny and you're not. Anybody who is like working on a professional level in this industry has the ability to be funny. Entertainment and jokes are part of what we do. Everyone's had to sit there and fill during a pause or on a panel and do something that's kind of funny. But I think the problem that we have now is panels are not just panels in a vacuum. It's all of the people that are casting the game or doing something else on the side. So the panel isn't consistent. It's just this constant rotation of, oh, you're not casting in this series? Okay, cool. Draskell, come on the panel this time. And you're constantly switching bodies in and out. And that's not to say it should always be the same panel, or you shouldn't have diversity, or you shouldn't bring in guests. But you have to kind of mimic what ESPN does, at least to some degree, where you identify the need for a good panel and you build up a group of people that have a lot of back and forth. One of the things I struggled with hosting ESL New York was Milk and I were the 2 guys that were on every panel segment. I had never been introduced to Milk until the day before the day of the broadcast. That morning, hey, yeah, this is Jacob. Oh, nice to meet you, dude. Hello. Oh, it's 7 a.m. It's really hard to have a good, funny back and forth banter with that guy when I've just met him. I know he's a wealth of knowledge. I know he's a funny guy, but I just can't read him. I just don't know him. And building that connection, and that this is the core of the panel. These guys their job is to work the panel, not be a hybrid panelist caster when the schedule works out. I think that's the fundamental difference. I think if people, there needs to be a dichotomy. If you want to choose to be a caster, that's great. Excel in that, do your thing. And we need people that can choose to be on the panel. I brought up Shane in my podcast as what I think is a perfect example of a great panelist that people overlook because he doesn't have another niche. He's not known as a high-level analyst, but he's a 5K plus MMR player. He fucking knows the game. He's not a bad player by any stretch of the imagination. He's funny. He kind of filled the shoes of Pyrian a little bit in the DreamHack stream. He's a guy that's shown himself to be clever and smart, and on top of that, he has good presentation. He's interesting, he's bold, he's not afraid to argue with you a little bit, make a bold statement, even if it might end up to be wrong, and then try to back it up later. To me, these are qualities that make a good panelist, but he doesn't fit in a lot of other places, and instead we get hung up on, well, what's his MMR? Was he on a pro team? Well, then what the fuck's he doing on this panel? And I think that's just the wrong knee-jerk approach that we've been taking for far too long.
Yeah, there's certainly an element there where people looking from the outside in maybe don't understand that it's not as simple as what's your MMR? Can you be funny on command? There really is a matter of compatibility, of chemistry on the panel, and those are things that for guys like you at Moonduck and Beyond the Summit, you seem to be sort of leading the charge in putting together a production that features cohesive personalities. Before we close up shop for the night, sadly, we're actually running short on time here. I actually want to ask you, you talked a little bit about how Beyond the Summit, they were sort of the jokesters, the guys that didn't give a fuck, if you will, and they wanted to put together this really meaningful product that also had sort of a funny side to it. As Moonduck gets bigger, which I think we can agree that it most certainly is getting bigger, do you ever see yourself ending up in the same situation where you have to sort of abandon Sir Action Slacks eating a sandwich on air for 100,000 people so that you can become esports, if you will?
Maybe a bit. I mean, it's all about finding that balance. And one of the things that we did in our debrief after, one of the things that we did at BTS that I very strongly believe in is when you do an event that is in-house with your people and you designed it and you had the power to prevent the fuck-ups, it's really important to, as soon as the event's done, the stream's off, you do the initial cleanup to sit everybody down and just decompress. When stress levels are still high, when you're still in the, feeling the adrenaline of the event, presumably it was at least somewhat successful at this point, the event's over, to sit down, and that's the time to get it all out. What were the things that went wrong? What were the bottlenecks that you found while it's still fresh, while everyone's still in that kind of judgment-free mental space and they can just get it all out? And one of the unanimous things that people brought up was we need to have more balance of content. We nailed the funny stuff. We had a lot of really good Slacks bits. Of course, not everybody likes every style of humor. Some people thought that scary video was over the line and too creepy. That's fine. That's great. We'll rein it in for next time. But we should have done more serious content. There should have been a purge analysis segment. There could have been a really cool green screen segment, or like John Madden style, where you're drawing on replays with Grant and Purge, where they go back and forth and watch replays in slow motion. That's a really simple example of an idea that is not that hard to do, not that hard to execute, that would have provided a lot of balance in our broadcast. So I think finding balance is really key. You don't want to be, go for the low-hanging fruit jokes too often, but we definitely want to maintain that side of goofiness. And, I think an example is having Slacks do the in-game stats. I know that's a little bit controversial. Some of the other stats people aren't particularly fond of it, but I see that as a really cool application of that functionality in the game. And it's something that people haven't really experimented with. Stats people who traditionally had to be there's a lot of pressure to be really serious and have only super serious numbers in there. And we like the idea of putting some comic relief there. And the thing with comedy is sometimes you miss the mark. Sometimes you cross the line. Sometimes you don't get close enough to the line, and that's what it's all about, just oscillating until you try to find that sweet spot and then milk it for all that it's worth. So yes, I think we will try to find that balance, but I don't think we're ever going to go full suit and tie and be ridiculous. I say ridiculous, be super serious. I'm so fucking tired of that word professionalism. Not that we should never be professional, but a lot of people throw it around and they don't really understand what it means or think about the implications. Occasionally you hear players throw that word around really willy-nilly, and it's like, man, there are a lot more regulations for real sports professional athletes than esports athletes. I'm just saying drug testing could become a thing, and it's like there are a lot of other things that come along with that you're not thinking about. So just shut the fuck up until you've thought about this, all the way through. That's kind of my take on that stuff. So, yeah. Find the middle line. That's what we're hoping for. So Captain's Draft 4, expect a little more serious content than what you saw in Captain's Draft 3, because it was nothing but memes, man.
Well, I'm just glad that you guys are focused on getting a nice balance of the funny, the likable, the enjoyable, and Purge. Before we get going tonight, yes, that was shots fired. Before we get going tonight, Zyori, do you have any closing thoughts before we close up shop?
Well, I guess I just want to parrot a little bit of what JJ said, is that the most frustrating part about all this major stuff, all the jokes aside about all of the issues, what's most important is the Dota. And it kind of sucks that the dialogue about the games that have actually been pretty high quality is just overblown by this sea of technical errors and administration errors and logistics errors and all this stuff. And it's just unfortunate. It kind of sucks for everyone, and I don't think anybody's happy with it. So, there will be future events. We'll get through it. The community will keep going. So, I don't don't know. At some point, we'll have to start looking at the positives here, but I'm sure everybody's waiting for the sea of tweets and blogs and videos that will come about once everybody is back home and back stateside. But thanks for having me on. It's always fun to do these shows. I'm glad to see other people making content like this that's engaging and different from just casting and point of view streaming. So keep fighting the good fight, man. I'm loving it.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. I appreciate that. And folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. Obviously, a lot of great guests on the show. Thank you so much to Zyori, Sun Tzu, and to PimpMuckl for coming on the show. And thank you so much to our producer, Stephen Toffee's Pierce, for helping us book the guests and get the content ready for tonight. I can tell you from extensive experience, he is invaluable behind the scenes. If you liked our show, go ahead and hit that follow button down below. If you really liked our show, hit that subscribe button. It's $4.99 a month, and we really appreciate it. Plus, you get access to the dumpster fire and shit hitting the fan emotes. Who doesn't love a little chaos in their life? If you want to see the VODs after the fact, over at youtube.com/daily.esports. Check us out on Facebook, daily.esports, and on Twitter @.esports. This has been True Sight, your friendly neighborhood Dota show from .esports. I've been Ian Doublejohn Barker. We will see you next time.